"Sir. I know I'm just a homeless kid, but I can help her," the boy stammered, eyes filled with tears. The old man turned, voice breaking with pain. "You don't know what it's like to lose your only child. Just go." "But I do," the boy whispered. "Because I lost mine too." Edward froze. The weight of those words shattered something inside him. He stared at the boy, a stranger, dirty, trembling, yet somehow, honest. Real. The hospital room was silent. Doctors had given up. Hope had run dry. But this child, with nothing but a broken voice and a broken past, stepped forward with something no one else had offered: belief. And when he began to sing, what happened next shook the entire hospital, and changed all three of their lives forever. If this story touches your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Behind the Billions, where every story deserves to be heard. ChatGPT said. "Sir," the boy's voice cracked with hesitation. The old man didn't stop. He kept walking down the hospital hallway, hunched, his face heavy with days of sleepless nights and shattered hope. I think I can help your daughter." That made Edward Langford stop. Slowly, he turned around to see who had spoken. A boy, barely 12. Skin darkened by sun and soot. His clothes were ripped at the sleeves and knees. His shoes were more holes than leather. And yet, his eyes burned with something Edward hadn't seen in weeks: belief. Edward blinked, unsure if he should be angry or amused. He wasn't in the mood for street kids or fantasy. His daughter, Amelia, was hooked to machines, trapped in silence since the accident. No doctor could bring her back. And now this? A homeless boy offering help. "You don't know what it's like to lose your only child," Edward said bitterly, his voice hoarse. "You don't belong here. Just go." The boy stepped forward, trembling. "But I do," he whispered. "Because I lost mine too." Edward's chest tightened. He stared harder. The boy wasn't lying. "You have a child." The boy shook his head. "My little sister. Her name was Layla. She was 6. She died in my arms last winter. I tried to keep her warm, but I failed." Silence. Edward swallowed something hard in his throat. This wasn't just some kid looking for sympathy. There was something else. A strange sense of purpose. "You're saying you can wake my daughter, by doing what?" "Praying." "By singing," the boy replied, eyes down. "I used to sing to Layla when she was scared or hurting. It made her sleep better. She said my voice was her favorite dream." For a moment, the billionaire stared at this child, this stranger from the street who somehow reminded him of something he buried deep. Vulnerability. Faith. The aching ache of powerlessness. He should say no. He should walk away. But what if? "You have 1 minute," he said finally. 1 minute. "If she so much as twitches, I won't stop you again." And that's how Malik, a homeless boy who hadn't showered in days, who carried the burden of a child far too old for his years, stepped into room 317 of the private hospital wing, and approached the sleeping figure of a girl draped in white sheets and silence. He stood by Amelia's bed, breath shaky. "Hi. I'm Malik," he said softly, barely louder than the beeping monitors. He reached out and touched her cold hand. "You don't know me. But I know how it feels to be alone. I know what it's like to be lost, but still want to come back." He closed his eyes and began to sing. A lullaby. Simple, broken, but overflowing with heart. Outside the glass door, Edward Langford stood frozen, watching the moment that would change his life forever. The moment Malik's voice floated through the hospital room, a strange stillness fell over everything. Even the machines seemed quieter, as if listening. The soft hum of fluorescent lights above, the distant footsteps of nurses, all of it faded under the weight of this boy's trembling melody. But not everyone saw the miracle unfolding. Two security guards, alerted by the nurse at the front desk, marched toward room 317 with firm footsteps and suspicious eyes. As they turned the corner and spotted the boy beside the girl's bed, one of them barked out, "Hey! You! What are you doing in here?" Malik's voice cut off instantly. He jumped, his hands rising as if he expected to be struck. Fear washed over his small frame. The lullaby, the only thing he had, died in his throat. Edward rushed forward, holding up a hand. "It's okay. I let him in." The guards paused, confused. One muttered, "Sir, he's not family. He shouldn't be here." "I know," Edward said, his voice distant. He couldn't stop staring at his daughter. Her hand, he swore it had twitched. Was it his imagination? He stepped past the guards and stood next to the boy. "What were you doing?" he asked, not unkindly now. Malik looked up with wide, nervous eyes. "I was just singing. That's all. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I just thought, maybe she'd hear me. Like my sister used to." Edward glanced at Amelia again. No further movement. No sign. And still, part of him wanted to believe. To believe that somehow, this ragged child had touched something none of the world-class doctors could reach. "Sing again," Edward said, suddenly. "Please." Malik blinked. "Really?" He nodded. "Go on. I'll make sure no one stops you." The guards exchanged unsure glances, but obeyed when Edward motioned them out of the room. Malik took a breath, shakier than before. He turned to Amelia and gently took her hand again. "I'm back," he whispered to her. "I'm sorry they scared us. I believe in you. And I know you can hear me." He began to sing once more. This time, the song was slower. Sadder. It spoke of loss and hope, of stars above dark alleyways, of dreams clung to even when everything else was stripped away. Edward stood there, watching. The melody pierced through him like a memory long buried, the lullabies his late wife used to hum to Amelia. The way his daughter would giggle and sway in her arms. His hands trembled. He clenched them behind his back, not wanting the boy to see him cry. And then, there it was again. A twitch. A flutter. So small, he nearly missed it. But this time, it wasn't just her finger. Amelia's eyelids moved. Edward stepped forward, heart pounding. "Amelia," he whispered. "Sweetheart." From beneath her lids, her eyes rolled faintly. A single tear slipped from her left eye, carving a line down her still cheek. Malik's voice cracked. Edward fell to his knees. And the entire world changed. The silence that followed felt louder than any sound Edward had ever known. He knelt beside the hospital bed, staring at the tear on his daughter's cheek, afraid to speak, afraid that if he breathed too loudly, it might all vanish like a dream. Then her lips moved. Barely. A tremble. And then again. Addie. It was the faintest whisper. But to Edward, it was a scream. A symphony. A resurrection. He lurched forward, gripping her hand with both of his. "Amelia. It's me. I'm here, baby, I'm right here." Her eyes, slowly, opened. Unfocused. Flickering under the hospital light. But they were hers. Her soft brown eyes, the ones that used to light up every room she entered. What happened?" she rasped. Edward choked on a sob. He couldn't speak. He couldn't even blink. He pressed his forehead to her hand and cried, deep, shaking sobs that sounded like a man being broken and rebuilt all at once. Malik stood a few steps away, still holding Amelia's other hand, unsure whether he was supposed to stay. Nurses burst into the room a second later, alerted by the change in her monitors. One of them gasped. Another called out, "She's conscious. She's awake." The room turned into a storm of movement. Doctors, nurses, voices. They circled Amelia with precision, checking vitals, whispering medical terms. But Edward couldn't let go. His eyes stayed locked on hers, filled with awe and the raw, unfiltered emotion of a father who just witnessed the impossible. In the midst of it all, Malik stepped back, unnoticed. No one thanked him. No one even looked at him. He didn't mind. This wasn't about being seen. This wasn't about reward. He had only one thing in his heart as he slowly turned to leave: peace. But before he could slip out the door, he felt a hand gently tug on his sleeve. He looked down. It was Amelia. Her fingers, still weak, clutched his frayed shirt. Her voice was almost inaudible, but she looked straight at him and said, "Don't go." The room froze again. Edward looked at Malik, truly looked at him for the first time, not as a stranger, not as a street kid, but as someone who had just given him back the one thing no money could buy. "Was it you?" he asked, standing. Malik shifted awkwardly, unsure what to say. I just sang." Edward nodded slowly. That song, that voice, it reached her. When medicine couldn't. When I couldn't. He walked over and put a hand on Malik's shoulder. For the first time in years, there was warmth in his touch, not power. "Thank you," he whispered, voice trembling. "You brought my little girl back." Malik's eyes glistened. And for the first time in a long time, he felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in months. Like maybe, he wasn't alone anymore. The hallway outside Amelia's room was quiet now. The chaos had settled, doctors reassured Edward that her vitals were stabilizing, and she was out of danger, a recovery nothing short of miraculous. But Edward couldn't go back into the room just yet. His mind was spinning. Instead, he found himself sitting on a bench just outside the ICU wing, next to the boy who had somehow cracked open the silence of death with nothing but a lullaby. For a while, neither of them spoke. The hum of vending machines, the distant call of a nurse over the intercom, the quiet shuffle of slippers on tile, it all felt distant. Edward finally broke the silence. "Where did you learn to sing like that?" Malik shrugged. His voice was low. "Nowhere. I just did it for Layla." Edward tilted his head. "Your sister?" Malik nodded. His eyes didn't meet Edward's. "She was all I had," he said. "We stayed behind an old bakery. Shared a blanket in the winter. I used to sing to her every night. I think it helped her forget we were hungry." Edward's throat tightened. He could hear the tremble in Malik's voice, the weight a child should never have had to carry. "What happened to her?" Malik was quiet for a long time. Then he whispered, "She got sick. I begged for help, but no one listened. I held her hand till she stopped breathing. And then I kept singing, even after she was gone." Edward's heart cracked wide open. The image of this boy, too small, too thin, holding his dying sister and singing to her through the cold, haunted him instantly. "I'm sorry," Edward said softly. "I'm so sorry." Malik shrugged again, wiping at his nose with the back of his sleeve. "I thought maybe if I could help your daughter, it would mean Layla didn't die for nothing." Edward didn't respond right away. He was staring at the floor, his hands clenched between his knees. "You know," he began, voice quieter now, "I spent my whole life building things. Buildings. Empires. A fortune people envied. But today, a kid with no shoes did something none of my money ever could." Malik looked up at him, eyes wide. Edward turned to him. "Do you have anywhere to go?" Malik shook his head. "Not really. I sleep wherever no one yells at me." Edward stood, brushing his coat back into place. "That changes now." Malik blinked. What do you mean? Edward extended a hand toward him. I mean, you're coming home with me. Not for a night. Not for a week. For good. Malik froze. His lips parted, but no words came. His breath caught in his throat. You don't have to be alone anymore, Edward said gently. You saved my daughter's life. Let me try to give you one back. And for the first time in years, Malik reached out, and took someone's hand. The Langford estate had never known warmth like this before. Not even in the golden years when Amelia would run barefoot through the marble halls, her laughter echoing under high ceilings. That joy had vanished after the accident, and even before, Edward would admit in hindsight, the house had been full of things, not feelings. But now, there was something different. Something human. Something healing. It had been 3 weeks since that moment in the hospital. Since a boy with no home, no shoes, and nothing to his name, sang a lost girl back to life. Amelia was recovering faster than any doctor had predicted. Her body was still tired, but her mind and soul were more alive than ever. And Malik, well, he was no longer the boy outside the glass. He had his own room now. It wasn't grand or gilded, just simple, soft sheets, a real bed, clean clothes in the closet, and a little photo of him and Amelia beside the nightstand. But more than that, he had a place. A space where he belonged. Where people listened when he spoke. Where someone asked him if he'd eaten, or if he was warm enough, or if he wanted to talk about Layla. One afternoon, as sunlight bathed the garden behind the house, Malik sat under a tree with a guitar on his lap, a gift from Amelia, who had found it in the attic and insisted it belonged to him now. Amelia sat nearby in a wheelchair, her legs still weak but her smile stronger than ever. She leaned her head back and listened as Malik strummed uncertainly at the strings. That's pretty, she said. Even when it's wrong. Malik chuckled. That's because you're nice. She tilted her head. No. It's because you play with your heart, not your hands. They sat in silence a moment. Birds chirped in the distance, and the breeze danced through the leaves. Then Amelia asked something she'd been holding in. Why did you come that day? Malik looked down at the guitar. Thought for a moment. Then answered softly, I think, because someone needed to. And because maybe. I didn't want to feel invisible anymore. Amelia reached over and put her hand gently on his. You're not invisible. Not anymore. Inside, Edward watched from the window. He saw the way Malik smiled now, real, open, without fear. He saw the way his daughter was glowing again. He never imagined the boy who walked into their lives with nothing would give them everything they'd lost. That evening, as Malik was getting ready for bed, Edward peeked into his room. Comfortable? He asked. Malik nodded. Yeah. It's warm. Edward lingered. He didn't know the right words. But before he turned to go, Malik whispered. Mr. Langford. Edward turned. Yes. Do I get to stay forever? Edward stepped into the room, bent down, and pulled the boy into a gentle embrace. You're home, son. Forever starts now. And for the first time in a long time, Malik fell asleep not beneath stars or rain or fear, but to the sound of someone turning off his light, whispering, good night.